Good morning and welcome to Rising. We've got just another great show for you today. I am joined by Chris Cillizza for the first time I've been hosting with
I know. This is my second time ever, but first time with you.
So it's fun.
I know. We're excited. I'm thrilled to do this.
It's really the joy of Rising that I get to meet so many interesting new people.
I thank you for calling me interesting and new. Very few people call me that. I'll take both. How are you?
I am doing just fine. Fine. Ready to get to the news.
Yeah, it's a little weird. It feels later than Wednesday.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know why, because it's summer. My kids are, like, out of school, which is actually more of a problem, interestingly enough.
You're like,
we have to entertain
send them back to school.
You have to entertain them. They're like, well, what are we doing now? And I'm like, well, I'm not going to the golf course again. Like, they just want to be entertained full time. Don't have kids, but kids are...
Maybe someday.
It's an adventure. All right, Robbie, what's on your radar? Let's do it.
Let's get to it. War with Iran is unfortunately brewing as President Donald Trump has now given every public indication that he is willing to follow Israel's lead and embroil the U.S. in another Middle East conflict. Critics of that notion on both the right and the left contend that a war of choice against Iran is a violation of the America First ethos and would break a fundamental campaign promise. Trump told voters no new wars when he ran for president again. Many people in the MAGA coalition are expecting him to stick to that. But if there's going to be a war with Iran, it is essential that the matter be discussed, debated, and voted on by our Congress. Iran is a sovereign nation with its own government, which means only Congress has the power to declare war on it. Look, this isn't some terrorist group already dubiously covered under the decades-old use of fourth authorization for the global war on terror. War with Iran would require new, unique authorization. And this would be an offensive war because Iran has not attacked the U.S., not directly. Again, that's something only Congress can approve. Our founders gave Congress, not the president, Congress, sole authority to declare war. It is the president's job to carry out a war, to conduct its military operation once Congress has signed off. That's how it worked in World War II, for instance. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, President Roosevelt asked Congress to vote to declare war, and all of them did so. If war with Iran is such a great idea, well, then members of Congress should be eager to vote for it. Let them be on the record supporting it, not with tweets, but with votes. Make them actually do something instead of just talking, prattling endlessly on social media and TV. The need for Congress to act is not lost, thankfully, on Republican Representative Thomas Massie. He was put forth, along with Democratic Representative Khanna, a War Powers Resolution Act that affirmatively states the U.S. government is not authorized to conduct a war against Iran. Now, I am happy to see that many left-leaning Democratic representatives, including AOC, have endorsed this motion, which just basically reaffirms what's already written in the Constitution. The president cannot go to war without Congress. Bipartisanship, by the way, so often applauded by the mainstream media when bipartisanship is accomplishing something bad. Mainstream elites love to applaud squishy rhino Republicans for joining with liberal Democrats to raise spending or increase regulation or save a government program. That's the kind of bipartisanship the media loves. What they don't like so much is the bipartisanship that sometimes happens at the outer edges of the left and the right, when figures like Thomas Massie and AOC come together and say, wait a minute, let's not rush headfirst into another war without thinking this through and checking in with whether the citizens of America want that. Yet I expect most people much prefer this kind of bipartisanship. I certainly do. As for Trump joining Israel and attacking Iran, I would like to remind our president that 10 years ago, when he first appeared on the political scene, he became super popular, not with the elites, but with the rank and file Republicans, because he dared to say that party leadership, that the Republican president, George W. Bush, they were all wrong about Iraq. Here's a refresher, one of the debates in the 2016 election cycle.
The war in Iraq was a big, fat mistake, all right? Obviously, it was a mistake. So George Bush made a mistake. We can make mistakes, but that one was a beauty. We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East. They lied. Okay. They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none, and they knew there were none. There were no weapons of mass destruction.
Now, you can say Iran and Iraq are different countries, and the circumstances are different, and that is true. If Iran hawks want to make their case, look, they have the floor. But you have to convince the American people. And regardless, Congress has to do its job, even if they don't want to, which seems to always be the case these days. So it's very simple. We should debate this in the halls of Congress like our founders intended and let them vote.
I was nodding the whole time.
I saw you.
They have my nodding camera, me off camera. Yes, no, totally. Look, I'm old, so I'm 49. I remember this debate happens. Every president, bipartisan, doesn't want to go to Congress to get an authorization of use of military force. I mean, it is. I feel like Tim Kaine, ever since he's been in the Senate, has been like banging the drum of like, why are we not doing this? And every time they're like, well, it's not exactly a military we're just going in for a little while.
Right.
You know, like it is. It's ridiculous. And you know, I would add, Robby, like this is whether you like Donald Trump or you don't like Donald Trump. The reality of Donald Trump's first 5.5 months as president is rapid and radical expansion of executive power.
Yes.
This is another case of that, and Congress, Republicans in Congress, in leadership, being like, okay, so I guess we're getting rid of USAID. Oh, okay, well, I guess we're getting rid of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Oh, so the Department of Education gone. Again,
right.
In the Constitution.
All of those things I support, but Congress needs to act.
This is my point.
I agree with you.
Look, when you have a Republican majority in the House and Senate, and you have a Republican president, Republicans should do conservative things. Yeah. That's why we have two parties in this country. But when you abrogate the processes that are in place, you set a tremendously dangerous precedent. I mean, I don't know how you don't draw that conclusion.
I don't know what you do with the government. We talk about the crisis of democracy. What do you do in the situation where Congress, where your chief lawmaking body, has simply no interest, for the most part, in doing their job? It's not like they're all out there protesting the loss of their authority and power. They seem, for the most part, happy to have it taken from them so they can spend more time being pundits on television and on social media.
Raising money, raising their
That's all they want to do.
And it's
endless committee hearings.
The incentive structure is all screwed up.
Yeah.
But again, I always cite, and I'll cite one on both sides. Like if you had to name 5 of the most, that not people like us, but normal people would know, name 5 members of Congress the average person would know. I'm not sure they get to 5, but I guarantee you in the first 5 are Marjorie Taylor Greene and Ilhan Omar. And a lot of people would probably say Matt Gaetz too, even though he's not in Congress anymore. Well, none of those people do anything in Congress. Mm-hmm. They just bang the drum and, raise money, go on TV. And that's part of the problem. But what's amazing to me is that they're not even trying. Yeah. That's the thing. It's like, you are seating, it is a co-equal branch of government. It's right there in the Constitution. I remember, again, I'm old enough to remember the old, after 94, the pocket constitutions that everyone was carrying.
Oh, my people.
That's right in your wheelhouse.
My people. And even with Iraq, there was a vote taken. There was a debate had.
And it mattered. I wrote this down, right? So go back.
It mattered for Hillary Clinton.
I was going to say, if Hillary Clinton does not vote for the war in Iraq, she almost certainly beats Barack Obama.
For sure.
The only logical explanation for Obama's candidacy, right, because he had just been elected, I was right in the beginning. I saw that video of him saying, I oppose the war. He's at a rally in Chicago or something. Yep. They played that. That was his sort of lever to get in the race. If she doesn't vote for it, it doesn't happen.
I was a student. I was at an undergraduate at the University of Michigan at the time. And he was beloved for that reason. A lot of other reasons too, but that was the main reason.
But that was the spark. Yep. And I think people don't remember that. That was the spark that got this all started.
No wonder they don't want to be on the record.
Exactly.
Voting one way or the other.
They don't want to be on the record. All right. Anyway, next up, President Trump's one big beautiful bill. OBBB, is it in jeopardy? Republicans are clashing over it, and voters don't seem too hot on it either. Republicans are clashing over the Senate's version of the one big beautiful bill, and make things worse, the public doesn't actually seem to be on board with it.
In a nutshell, the arguments revolve around the Senate's increasing Medicaid cuts, easing up on the green energy tax credit rollbacks, and lowering the state and local tax or SALT deduction cap. Congressman Chip Roy told reporters yesterday, "My main takeaway for you guys is this bill, as the Senate has produced it, is definitely dead if it were to come over to the House in anything resembling its current form."
Democrat-turned-Republican Congressman Jeff Van Drew of New Jersey told The Hill that he's most concerned about the Medicaid cuts. "This is political stupidity. It's political suicide," Drew said. "Why would you hurt these people?" Van Drew told The Hill. "There are a lot of working, poor, blue-collar people. There are people now, they were part of this new Republican Party, and we should make sure that they're safe not only for political reasons, but also for the right thing to do."
CNN pollster Harry Enton broke down how the big, beautiful bill may even hurt Republicans in the midterms.
We're talking about a negative 41 net favorability rating among independents in the center of the electorate. You rarely ever see pieces of legislation or proposed pieces of legislation as unpopular as this. But here you see it in two polls, 26 points underwater and 29 points underwater. No good.
White House spokesman Kush Desai told Axios in a statement, President Trump pledged to protect Medicaid, eliminate taxes on tips and overtime, slash wasteful spending, extend his historic 2017 tax cuts, and implement pro-growth policies to usher in the historic job, wage, investment, and economic growth that Americans experienced during his first term. The one big, beautiful bill will do just that. The American people don't seem to think so, and neither do I. I've been raging against the big, beautiful bill. Me and Elon campaigning against this thing from the right. I hate
company.
it. Yes, I
Your
hate
net
it.
worth combined is very high.
I think together we're the richest man in the whole world.
I always had a friend who had won like 3 Pulitzers, and I was like, between us, 3 Pulitzers. That's pretty good.
It's and two winners of Time's Person of the Year.
That's exactly
2007.
right. I did love that bit, though it's so hackneyed now
I still
on Twitter.
use it. Yeah.
Time's Man of the Year.
Got to put it in the bio.
Look. They have backed themselves, I think, Republicans, into this weird corner, which is like, you can't control the White House, the House, and the Senate. And I think people broadly know that Republicans are in control. You can't do that and do nothing.
Yes.
I don't think. Because, like, what's your message in 2026? Like, well, we were there. At the same time, your option now appears to be to pass something that the public doesn't want, but we're going to convince the public that they want it, which I will remind people, March 2010. March 2010. There is no such thing as 2010. That's a long time from now. March 2010. Congress, controlled by Democrats, passes Obamacare.
Right.
It's very unpopular. Barack Obama told me and every other reporter, you just wait and see. People know what's in it. They're going to love it. 63 House seat Republican gain, 5 Republican seat gain in the Senate later in 2010. It's just... once people's mind get made up about these big things, these big legislative things, it rarely changes.
Well,
I don't know what they do.
I think the problem Republicans have is they have promised for my entire life that if you put us in power, we will cut government spending,
Yes.
we will balance the budget, we will shrink the deficit. And now they have more power in government than they've, with the exception of the George Bush time right around then.
Since the first
Yes.
2 years of Trump.
They have
Yes.
so much power, they can do it. And they've promised to do it, and now they put forth a bill that maintains all of the previous spending levels that they've been railing against.
And would add trillions to the deficit.
It would add trillions more. And I don't see how you can go back to your own voters, the people that elected you in Republicans, MAGA people to put you in charge, and say, we had an opportunity to do what we said we were going to do, but we're not doing it. So it's unpopular on that end, and then it's unpopular, obviously, on the liberal and moderate end for some of the cuts that are not politically popular, like the entitlements cuts, which I would be happy to make law because I want to tackle entitlements, but maybe they're not popular.
Okay,
Fine.
so I have a question.
Yes.
Did they not believe it then, or do they not believe what they're doing now? That's like, because there's no way, if you're a 2012 Paul Ryan fiscal hawk.
Yes. I basically am.
There's a 0% chance you look at this bill and think, this is good fiscal policy. This is good conservative fiscal policy. Outside of the tax cut, which, but and maybe, I guess, if you're like, well, we need to dip a toe into the entitlement, we're dipping a toe into Medicaid, and we need to address that, and this is a way in. But I just don't see how, if you've been in Congress for a decade, you look at that and you say, like, yes, as a fiscally conservative Republican, as a deficit hawk, I'm for this. Like, I actually think Chip Roy is right.
He is absolutely right. I've been toasting Rand Paul for crusading against this on exactly these lines. It's just people get it. They understand that you're full of it. If you said you were going to do this, if you said this was important to you, you gotta do one thing. You gotta do entitlements or defense or massively slash government departments or something. You can't waste, fraud, and abuse your way out of this problem. I'm glad that they're tackling waste, fraud, and abuse, but there isn't enough of it. Or everybody thinks it's unpopular foreign aid. Good, eliminate it all. I would with a swipe of my pen, I would eliminate all unpopular foreign aid and foreign programs. That will not balance the budget. That will not fix the deficit. We need to tackle entitlements or defense. And doing defense at least would be popular. It seems like there was bipartisan support for that. Some Democrats said they would go along for the ride on that. They didn't even try.
I always point out to people when they're like, Trump is slashing government. We're reducing waste, fraud, and abuse. I'm like, let me just give you some rough numbers. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and the defense budget, which, by the way, Trump touts all the time now as biggest budget ever, $1 trillion. That's about 80 to 85% of the budget. So, like, yeah, you want to get rid of the Department of Education. I mean, look, since Newt Gingrich, we've been talking about getting rid of the Department of Education. Okay.
Gone, dead.
You know what the Department of Education's budget is? It's not a lot of money.
Billions with a B, not a T.
Right, it's a lot of money for us, but for the government. And that's my point. It's like,
you can overdo that and then never end up cutting any, every time they try to eliminate something, well, it's not a lot, so it's, So I don't want to use that as an excuse not to cut things. But the big fundamental question of how in debt our government is, how much we spend beyond our means, will not be addressed, I agree, by those kinds of things.
So do they do this? Put on your prognosticator hat.
I suspect they will do some version of it. I think they absolutely will.
They feel like they have to.
Yeah.
And you think so in the House then it's like the Chip Roy, Thomas Massie's vote against it, that's 2, they can lose 3. And that's basically it.
Yep, and it gets through with the narrowest of margins, and Trump people plan to run on the other parts of his agenda that are popular with the American people, the immigration policies, and say, see, we're fulfilling our promises on this and this and this. I think that's the plan.
I also wonder whether they do the Trump thing, which is $1,000 tax cut check to every family next summer. So I don't know if it's $1,000. So I don't know what the number is, but I'm interested to see. Is that because you got to sell it somehow?
No,
it can't be about
no tax on tips is a good idea though. That one is politically popular.
It's a brilliant political. There's a reason Kamala Harris copied it.
Yeah.
Now, is it good fiscal policy?
Well, I think we're just all going to be paid via tips in the future. If that,
no tax.
I would like
to take tips.
I would like Nexstar to convert me to a tipped employee, please.
Okay. Another Democrat has been manhandled by ICE, and we have more details on all of that next.
Let's go! Take it back. Take it back. Take it back. Take it back. Step back. Step back. You don't have authority to arrest U.S. citizens. Sir, you don't have the authority to arrest U.S. citizens. Stay back. Step back, guys. You don't have. I'm not obstructing. I'm standing right here in the hallway. I asked to see the judicial warrant.
That's New York City mayoral candidate Brad Lander. He's the latest Democrat to be targeted by ICE. The New York City comptroller was arrested and released by ICE at immigration court on Tuesday. He says agents threatened to arrest him if he did not let them detain someone facing immigration issues. Now, that comes a week after California Senator Alex Padilla was dragged out of an LA press conference for DHS Secretary Kristi Noem. Padilla choked up on the Senate floor yesterday while he was recounting that experience. Let's watch.
I was pushed and pulled, struggled to maintain my balance. I was forced to the ground. First on my knees, and then flat on my chest. And as I was handcuffed and marched down a hallway, repeatedly asking, why am I being detained? Not once did they tell me why. I pray you never have a moment like this.
Meanwhile, ICE agents have been ordered to resume workplace raids at hotels, restaurants, and farms. That comes after the Trump administration previously paused those operations. ICE agents also have a strict White House goal to arrest 3,000 migrants per day.
So politicians on social media are bashing the policy reversal. California Governor Gavin Newsom says, looks like Stephen Miller is the boss. After all, Trump got bigfooted by his own staff. Pathetic.
On the other hand, Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk is in full support of the immigration crackdown. He writes, Trump's handling of the border is one of the greatest accomplishments in modern times. So let's actually start, though, with the Ladner case. I mean, look, he was. I don't love when people obviously get manhandled by the police or the authorities. I'm a libertarian, but the reporting suggests to me he was obstructing. He was getting in the way of a lawful, proper deportation effort by ICE. These things take place at courthouses for good reason, because that minimizes the risk to anybody else, to violent risk, because when people go into a courthouse, they've already gone through security. I don't want ICE grabbing people off the street, knocking people's doors down in the middle of the night. If we're going to do deportations, this is the way to do it. And it sounds like, based on the reporting, he's entitled to a defense, whatever, that he was trying to get this person, escort this person, kind of like that judge who got into trouble. So I don't know that it was improper. You don't just have the right to do that.
So I took a lot of, let's call it stuff, because we're on TV, last week. Because with the Padilla thing, I was like, well, neither side strikes me as totally blameless. The left was like, this is an authoritarian state, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, I'm not defending. They could have de-escalated this once they realized he was a senator. I mean, honestly, once they realized he was a citizen, but they could have de-escalated it once they realized he wasn't an active threat. Right. At the same time,
you can't just go up to a cabinet official.
He heard there was this briefing, and again, it wasn't a press conference. People were not asking questions.
Right.
She was briefing. He goes in, and he just interrupts her and starts talking. So my point is, like, he meant it to be provocative.
1,000%.
He meant it to create a stir. Now, did he want to be cuffed and put on the ground? No. Was that appropriate? I would argue no, once it had been ascertained that he wasn't an active threat. Yeah. I kind of feel the same way. So this guy knew that this Lander guy who's running for, by the way, important context, he is running behind Zoran Mamdani and Andrew Cuomo in the Democratic primary for governor.
Yes.
For New York City mayor next week. Okay. He goes in knowing that this guy is someone who they're trying to get, with his arm linked with him. It's not like he's just, I can't believe this is happening. I mean, that is an outcome that could happen when you do this.
Right. It seems difficult to reach any conclusion other than it was an orchestrated political stunt for that reason. And I feel the same way a little bit in the senator's case, that if you try to walk up to a cabinet official mid-speech, I don't think senators should have, political figures have more rights than U.S. citizens.
No.
Anyone who tries to do
Same
that
right.
is gonna get dragged away. I didn't like how aggressive it was either,
Right.
because I just don't like when anybody does that, when law enforcement does that in general. But that's what's going to happen. You didn't have the right to just interrupt her. Ladner doesn't have the right to just exempt this guy through whatever immigration process was about to take place, nor did that one judge who was like, no, sneak out this way.
Yeah.
You can't do that. I'm sorry. You just can't.
It bugs me that we've reached a place politically where it's like Padilla or Ladner or whoever, it's like, it's either this is the authoritarian police state or this is an innocent man being victimized. Like,
Right.
it can't be both. Like, it's either the cops are doing their job and this guy's fighting, or the cops are the worst. It's like,
Right.
well, this guy's running for mayor. This is something that will get him attention and presumably, like, might not hurt him in that primary, right? Did you know? I mean, I will admit, I did not know his name prior to the last 24 hours. I know he's the comptroller of New York, which I'm not, but, like, I knew Andrew Cuomo's name and Zoran Mamdani's name because those are the two who are most likely to win. So it's like, politicians do political
There's one
things.
called Whitney and Ladner. I think I can name.
That's a
I
law
can name
firm.
4 of
That's
them.
a law firm. That's totally different.
No, I think there's one called. Well, I'm not a New York citizen, so I don't. I don't have
me
to rank
neither.
these people.
Yeah, but my point is like politicians do political things.
Yeah.
Brad Lander, I'm not saying he should be. I want to disagree with you more, but I think we're in the same boat, which is like
We'll get to something today we disagree on. I hope.
You shouldn't treat him roughly, but he's not doing it for purely altruistic reasons. It's the same thing with Padilla. I don't understand why we can't say like, okay, yeah, that makes common sense.
File an injunction. File a court proceeding if the detention is wrongful, and maybe you'll win. The courts are pushing back on plenty of things Trump is doing with respect to immigration. That's the way to do it. Actually, trying to obstruct the officials with your own body is a stunt.
I wonder if I may be a libertarian.
Oh, oh boy.
Conversion.
Coming up, Ilhan Omar says the United States is being turned into one of the worst countries. More on that next. Did Ilhan Omar just call America one of the worst countries?
Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar criticized the increasing authoritarianism of the Trump administration, including its crackdown on anti-ICE protesters in Los Angeles. Let's watch.
I grew up in a dictatorship. And I don't even remember ever witnessing anything like that. To have a democracy, a beacon of hope, for the world to now be turned into one of the worst countries where the military are in our streets without any regard for people's constitutional rights.
Omar then said this about the president's military parade. Here we go.
While our president is spending millions of dollars propping himself up like a failed dictator with a military parade, it is really shocking, and it should be a wake-up call for all Americans to say this is not the country we were born in. This is not the country we believe in. This is not the country our founding fathers imagined.
Florida's Attorney General James Uthmeier blasted Omar on X, writing, "Denaturalize and deport." Last Saturday, the U.S. Army celebrated its 250th anniversary. That also happened to be President Trump's birthday. The Trump administration geared up for the parade filled with tanks and armored personnel carriers rolling through the nation's capital. People in dozens of cities took to the streets protesting the event, calling it a politicization of the armed forces by an autocrat. Look, I think what Ilhan Omar does wrong is she just goes too far in saying America is the worst. It's like, we'll try to have some perspective. And I know she does have perspective because she grew up elsewhere in a more authoritarian environment. I have also criticized some of the excesses of the Trump administration, particularly with the immigration stuff. I don't like it either. I don't like the idea of the military on the streets. Now, if you're rioting and looting and setting things on fire, that's going to be the natural response. People don't like that. Americans don't want that. Low-income people who live in those cities that get set on fire, they don't like that either. They want law enforcement to come in. But let's maintain some perspective. China is an authoritarian menace. Russia is an authoritarian menace. North Korea.
Right.
Even our Western enlightened allies in like Europe, in Germany, they'll send the police to your front door to jail you for like a tweet they don't like because they don't have the First Amendment. So let's maintain some perspective. This is a wonderful, beautiful, free country. We have some issues with what our government does. I have plenty of issues with that. I think it's fine to criticize that, but I think she loses perspective a little bit.
Yeah, because we can do this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you don't have the rising in China.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
well, they do, and it's like, oh, the dear leader had
terrific job, Mr. President.
Knocked you out of the park again.
It's exactly what you. Anytime you're going to say anything like the worst country, I hate that on both sides. You know, I feel like our political rhetoric, our political journalism, and sort of broadly our politics rewards extreme positions now. It's like the only thing, it's like you take an extreme position and then the only way that you get back on TV or get more attention is take a more extreme position. So you're just constantly farming out more extreme positions. I'll be honest, like, I didn't love the idea of tanks rolling through Washington. I thought, like, ooh, it's not, those optics aren't really great. I will say I watched a fair amount of it, and I watched it on channels where it wasn't like rah-rah or this is the worst thing in the world. I thought it was fine. I thought, look, I actually think Saturday was a success for democracy. The people who wanted to support Donald Trump, broadly the military and I guess a little Donald Trump, were there to celebrate him. I know liberals are like, there was no one there. Okay, man, fine, whatever. Like,
there were millions of people watching it on television.
And it was a pain in the butt to get there. I wasn't coming down there. Yeah. Anyway, bad weather, whatever. And also, as you noted, there were millions of people protesting. That's how America and democracy works. Yeah. That's a good thing, not a bad thing. And I did not think watching the military parade, I was not like, oh man, he's using this to threaten us, that they're going to take over. It was like mostly a bunch of men and women who were really, like soldiers, who were waving and thrilled to be there and to show off what they do. And
the historical perspective, how the military technology has changed, how the uniforms have changed. I think it was educational and interesting from a history perspective. There's not enough, American history. There's some criticisms or complaints that it's not emphasized enough in our schools, that we don't have enough of an appreciation for the we can talk about the bad, obviously, but the good, too, in our history, the successes.
I don't know. I was not watching any of that thinking, oh, man, this is North Korea. Do you know what I mean? Like, I thought it would be 50 to 70% Trump, 30% Army celebrate, right? Like in the 79th birthday of Trump, 250th birthday Army. It wound up being like, you could quibble with the percentages, but 95-5 Army Trump. He even, like, his speech was the shortest speech I've literally ever heard him give. I mean, he did the "we're the hottest country in the world" line, like from his campaign speeches, but it wasn't particularly partisan, and he ended it pretty quickly, and then we went on to celebrating the army and the military more broadly. I just, tempest in teapot.
The thing I disliked about it the most was that it made my travel back to D.C. very difficult. But
I had to come in the
fine.
night before
Yeah.
to do News Nation. It was unpleasant. A lot of workarounds. Thank you, Waze.
Yeah. Next up, the Israel-Iran conflict is splitting the parties, but it's created some unlikely allies in Congress. We'll tell you about it if that's up next.
There is nothing like war to bring people together. Many Republicans and many Democrats are cheerleading for war right now.
Whereas leftists and libertarians in Congress appear to be building a coalition to limit the power of President Trump to pull the U.S. into Israel's campaign against Iran. That big question is whether Democrats will use these attacks as an opportunity to oppose Trump, or whether they'll fall in line, as some in their leadership actually seem to support military action. Now, Virginia Senator Tim Kaine is leading the anti-war resolution in the Senate. He said in a statement to NBC, the American people have no interest in sending service members to fight another forever war in the Middle East. Good for him.
But Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, seemingly hesitant to endorse the resolution, saying, quote, "I believe Congress and Senate Democrats, if necessary, will not hesitate to exercise our authority." Now, that statement was clearly not what many Democrats were hoping for. Representative Ro Khanna of California responded on X, writing in part, "What in the world does this mean?" and adding, "This is why your numbers are toxic with our base. They want us to be the anti-war party again." And former Democratic National Committee Vice Chair David Hogg agreed, quote, "Any Democrat who supports this war with Iran needs to be primaried. Our generation grew up going through two multi-trillion-dollar wars we should have never been involved in. We are not going back to that. If you think this is a good idea, read a history book." Oh!
So I'm very interested to see how this shakes out. You know, Republicans, there is disagreement between many elected Republican officials in the Trump administration and the kind of conservative MAGA influencers. We're going to get more into that in a later segment. Tucker Carlson really going hard against this and others. So you see the tension on the right. I'm very interested in whether there's going to be, you're starting to see cracks of dissent on the Democratic side, or where things even shake out. Chuck Schumer clearly supports doing this. John Fetterman, perceived as a more right-leaning and Trump-friendly Democrat, wildly in favor of it. David Hogg, now not in a position in the DNC anymore, says it's a bad idea. Ro Khanna says it's a bad idea. Bernie Sanders says it's a bad idea. Where do you see this conversation going on the Democratic side?
I think the Republican cracks have been more covered.
Yeah.
I think the Democratic cracks are just as interesting because, remember, whether you agree or disagree with where the Republican Party is now, it's Donald Trump's party. So largely, I think whatever Donald Trump decides, Republicans will be like, oh, that sounds great. The Democratic Party has no leadership, and they're out of power everywhere, and they're trying to figure out what they are. Are they Bernie, AOC? I'll put David Hogg in there. I mean, this probably flatters David Hogg to include him in that three, but are they that party? Populist, I don't want to say anti-war, but very skeptical of foreign conflicts? Or are they the kind of like, the establishment party that I guess Hillary Clinton sort of embodies, right? I mean, I feel like we've been through this before. Go back to the use of force against Iraq. Who was against it then in the Democratic Party? Good old Bernie Sanders, right? I mean, he was like, we cannot do this. And the Hillary Clinton, John Edwards, call back to a former generation, John Edwards, John Kerry, what we would define as the establishment then, certainly of the Democratic Party, was like, I don't know if they actually supported it because so many of them walked away from it long run, but they thought it was the right political vote, which, by the way, goes back to your previous point. Make them vote. Put them on the record. Their job is to vote.
And having gone through that experience, it now seems obvious from just a politics standpoint which would be the right course of action for the Democratic Party. Seems fairly obvious to me that going absolutely against this would be, in my view, the politically good thing for them to do. It gives them something to define themselves in opposition to Trump. That's what they want to do. They want to fight Trump.
With the base
and it's like, and the base, some people, and the normal people, like if you poll people, even very conservative-leaning people, they're always more skeptical of foreign intervention than the establishment. And I think some people will go, wait a minute, you want to fight Trump to the death on deporting people, on toxic cultural issues, transgender stuff, Gulf of America. But you don't want to fight on whether we're going to have World War III? Are you kidding me? So it just seems so apparent that they should really stand up against this. And many of them are, to be clear. I'm not. It's a division that's going to emerge. But Chuck Schumer, how can he claim to be the right person for this moment if he's going to back up the administration on this and be the most prominent leader of the Democratic Party in Congress? That seems impossible to me.
And remember, Chuck Schumer was the guy, and we can argue about the policy of it, but the politics of it, Chuck Schumer was the guy who said, oh, well, we're going to make a deal to keep the government open on the budget, right? Like, it's a fundamental misread. Look, this happens. Politicians pass their expiration date. They just do. So do people. You know what I mean? Like, at some point, and I think Chuck Schumer Chuck Schumer in the 90s, I will say, had an incredible ear for what sort of the party wanted, right? He'd been in Congress for a long time. He ran for the Senate. He wins a competitive Senate primary. He beats Al D'Amato. Like, he has lost it, right? I just think the party, it's the McConnell.
Yes.
I mean, party has the party underneath it, the rank and file, is much more liberal than Chuck Schumer is.
Yes.
And just like the party was, I don't know if it was more conservative or more Trumpy or whatever, but much different than what Mitch McConnell was. And that has happened. And like, look, I give a guy like Ro Khanna's running for president. Yes. Okay, like there's a reason that I think he believes this stuff, that the U.S. should not be in this, but he's running for president. But I actually think he understands where the party is at the moment much better than Chuck Schumer.
This is a party that's having trouble specifically with young men as a result of the last election results, losing young people, but particularly young men. And what so many commentators probably forget is that young men are particularly sensitive to the issue of military involvement because they're who gets sent off to wars. Yeah. And so it's not, again, this is going to be an issue that further alienates young guys who increasingly affiliated with Joe Rogan are getting their news from independent podcast people, all of whom are against this kind of thing. That appeals to young men, and your message to them is going to be, yeah. Well, let's increase military hostilities. It's a losing message to win people back.
I was thinking this morning. You know who would be the Democrat if it wasn't Schumer? The Democrat cheering this on the loudest? Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. Right?
Oh yeah.
I think we.
You think he was going to tell Israel no?
No chance. and I think we know that version of the Democratic Party, that Biden establishment, hawk-it, that version of the Democratic Party is not, now maybe it sells broadly as in a general election, it is not what the Democratic base wants. Not even close.
Could not agree more. Up next, a C-SPAN caller blasting Jake Tapper over his coverage of former President Joe Biden. Stay tuned. A C-SPAN caller confronted CNN's Jake Tapper in a now viral clip.
The caller pressed him on why he's not as aggressive on Donald Trump's mental state as he was on Joe Biden's. Let's listen.
But right now, I really don't like you. I think you're doing a disservice to Joe and also to the American people. This president has been pure chaos, which indicates to me that there is something wrong with him. We will never get a straight answer on his medical examinations, what medication he is on. And yet you have gone after Joe Biden with a vengeance.
Here was Tapper's response.
We have covered times that he has confused Nancy Pelosi with Nikki Haley. I think some of the questions about President Trump's behavior have more to do with personality than with cognitive decline. But obviously, whatever lessons we've learned from covering President Biden, we would apply to any politician, any future politician or president.
Tapper has been doing media appearances for his latest book called Original Sin, which chronicles the former president's cognitive decline and its alleged cover-up. House Republicans have cited this book to help ignite their investigation into whether aides helped cover up Biden's decline.
Multiple Biden aides have already agreed to testify to the House Oversight Committee. Today, former West Wing officials who served in Trump's first administration and a legal scholar will testify in a Senate Judiciary hearing.
Missouri Senator Eric Schmidt told Fox News Digital, "I look forward to hearing from our panel of witnesses who will share their expertise on the Constitution, the approval process within the White House, and the media's access to the president. The American people are demanding accountability, and this hearing will be the first step in that process.
So the difference the caller gets at, I mean, it's not the same thing at all. Trump's age and mental health and fitness are exhaustively litigated in the media, as is appropriate. Biden's was not until it became so obvious to everyone. And also, Trump makes himself available to the media constantly. He talks in front of a camera all the time. Just was yesterday or the day before, right? There was a news story about him responding to Tucker Carlson on what the definition of America First is. That was prompted by a reporter for The Atlantic just calling him and getting his answer. Can you imagine someone just calling Joe Biden and being able to get through to him? That's insane. So these are not the same things remotely. What Joe Biden went through was a noticeable, once we were actually able to see it, noticeable decline in cognitive ability, one that everyone who has dealt with elderly grandparents or great-grandparents or relatives intuitively understands is akin to that. Trump is wild, and he says a lot of crazy things, and you don't have to like him at all or like his policies, but it's who he is, and I don't see any dramatic difference in that kind of performance or behavior at any time when he has been on the political scene.
So I have three thoughts. One, this is always dangerous because I still remember Rick Perry doing I'm going to get rid of three bureaus, and he couldn't remember third.
Joe Biden sticks to two and struggles with that.
Thought one, God bless C-SPAN.
Yeah.
Thought two, good for Jake. I mean, he's my friend, but also, good for him. You know you're going to get some of that on C-SPAN.
Yeah.
I kind of like that Washington Journal show. I've done it where people just call and they're like, you're a real jerk. Okay, point three, yes to your thing about Trump. I always say this. Donald Trump created a fictional character named John Barron, who was him, in the 1980s to call the New York Post and put items into Page 6 about how virile and sexually appealing Donald Trump was. That's nothing has changed.
Yeah.
Cognitive decline means decline. Look, yes, is he a little bit, does he wander off rhetorically more than he did when he was 45? Yes. Does everyone who's 79 wander off a little bit more than they did with 45? Yes. He is not in decline. He has been like this. Again, like you said, Robby, this is perfect. You can hate him, but he's been this guy his entire life.
Right.
Boasting, and he lies all the time. He's always been this person, so he's not declining. If you think he's a jerk, he was a jerk in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, the 2020s. So to me, it's not the same at all. And I will say, you see a news story pop up every single day where it's some reporter, I saw Tara Palmieri, who now is on her own, right? She used to work for Puck. She's now on her own. Good Substack, The Red Letter. She's like, I called President Trump Sunday night and he picked up. What? What? Number one, how do reporters have the guy's cell phone number? Number two, how does he pick up? Yes, it's not the same. And I cannot stand, and I get this a lot, the criticism from Democrats of well, what about Trump? Dude, Trump has been covered and covered and covered. Would I rather Donald Trump release his medical records and not have his personal doctor be like, Donald Trump is the healthiest person ever to be president? Yes, of course.
Of course.
But Joe Biden, it's apples and oranges. And it bugs me that Democrats can't see that.
Yeah, because they hid him from us. They did not allow the people, yes, and they being what it turns out to be a small handful of people of his inner circle and aides who kept him not only hidden from the American people, but also his own cabinet and the media. It's really incredible and dramatic. Let's talk briefly about these hearings that are going to take place with respect to the Biden cognitive decline stuff. I tend to find Republican committee hearings along these lines as a little bit performative. I'm not sure how much more. The Jake Tapper book is very good. Good reporting is finally being done. I think you should judge Democratic officials who had some knowledge of this and didn't say anything appropriately. I think his inner circle should be shunned from public life entirely. What more can be done from a governance perspective? He got forced from the ticket, and his successor was beaten at the election. What more can be done? I find it very dubious, the notion that he didn't really know what he was signing, so he could undo the pardons. That seems like wishful thinking, my friends. I'm just going to say it.
Totally. You said a little bit performative for this congressional hearing. I'm going to say a lot bit performative. By the way, Democrats do performative hearings when they're in control too.
That's a Congress thing. They would rather do performance than governance.
I think that as soon as I saw the witness list, it's like Sean Spicer. Now, Sean is fine, but how much light is Sean Spicer going to shed on Joe Biden's inner circle?
Right.
I think Republicans are a little bit over their skis in the whole auto pen thing. You know, this guy saying, well, Elizabeth Warren was in charge of signing this stuff. Like, again, if that's true, show it to me. You know,
my heart just, I suffered a brief coronary event when you said that.
That should have been a trigger warning for you. I'm sorry.
Oh, God.
But it just, look, the guy was clearly in decline. He was clearly aggressively hidden from the public, and they shamed and shunned any reporter who tried to report on that. Yes, Alex Thompson of Axios, who co-wrote this book with Jake, gets a lot of credit for his stories. You know who doesn't get enough credit? The Wall Street Journal.
Yeah,
Annie Linsky and other people were out there, and the Biden people savaged, campaign and White House savaged them. And so credit to them. But I'm with you. I don't know how much. I don't think this hearing is going to blow the top off this story.
Let's say it was, Jill Biden was putting the paper, sign this, Smiley, and he was doing it.
It's the still, hand.
Right. It still counts. Even if it was done that way, which is why I think this is a little bit of it. We're not going to undo. I wish we could undo some of those pardons. I think the whole
the pardon
COVID
thing is
thing
totally
cannot
broken.
be but it happened, and so it's just done, and elections have consequences. The election to have him in power in the first place. That does it for us today on the live component of Rising. Look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way next. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Hills YouTube channel so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're now available anywhere that you can listen to podcasts. This was so much fun. Thanks for being here, Chris.
I'm always happy to come. Thank you for having me.
And we'll see you back here later. Bye-bye.